I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, January the 3rd, brought to you entirely by DV Auction. And don't give enough credit there. DV Auction is getting ramped up for a big spring sale season on production sales. That's our bread and butter, is broadcast and production sales. And if you're having a bull sale, female sale combination there this spring, you want to hurry up and get your sale booked. Make sure you get DV Auction out there to do any video work that you have. There's no reason to run those high dollar cattle breeding stock through the ring anymore. We can get your videos done and have those sales just all on big screen TVs there to watch for your crowd that's local, and also broadcast over the internet with those same videos. And we want to be sure and get those in and get them done as quick as you can. We've got the biggest buyer base that's out there, and we do twice as many sales as the next closest competitor for a reason. That's because do the best job and sell the most online. But let's look at your commercial cattle conditions. The winter feedlots are just boggy, nasty, messy. Down here in the Texas Panhandle, about the only place that they're dry. You get up into Kansas, they had some pretty good snow there over the holidays. And you get up in Nebraska and Iowa, and they've just been struggling with wet, boggy conditions all through the fall and now into the winter. And it seems like you have really bitter cold temperatures come in, and then have a lot of frozen moisture, and then it starts to warm up, which you'd think would be nice, but then there's just no bottom to those lots out there, and it's just sloppy, messy, and the cattle are bogging down. It's pulling weight off of them. They're not yielding as good, and they just it saps those cattle to have to pull that mud, and then you got a lot of tag on them, got a lot of waste, and it's not a good condition for anything to do with feeding cattle. That's why many years ago they moved a lot of it to the Great American Desert down here in the Southern Plains. But we've seen a lot of our feeding capacity migrate back to the Midwest because everybody decided that the winters aren't quite as bad as they were when they were a kid or many years ago. But now when you have one of these wet winters like this, and it doesn't stay bitter cold, they actually prefer the bitter cold temperatures, because then you get those lots to kind of freeze dry. And when they're freeze dried, you can go out there in your Sunday school boots and feed. If you're feeding with buckets, you can get around good with feed trucks. Guys can get around a lot better pulling sick ones and things like that. But whenever you get a lot of that frozen moisture, and then you get the temperatures warming up, it just seems like you're in quicksand all the time. But that's what's hurting. It's actually going to benefit your fat cattle market probably here over the next several weeks because it's pulling weight off those cattle. And your fat cattle market always loves a storm and kind of rough conditions. But on your feeder cattle, it's just going to be tough, because guys just feel like they can't stand any more cattle. They just want to keep cattle moving and find a dry place for them to sit down, you know, if they can, get them some bedding out there. But a lot of these feedlots are still really full. They don't have any place to put new cattle. And even though our health conditions will be a whole lot better now that all the cattle have had some really bitter cold weather on them, nearly all the cattle have had snow on their backs. The majority of your cattle are long time weaned now. And even though we see that, it's going to be a little bit tough on your feeder cattle markets here for a little bit till we get these conditions to either stay hard and froze or to dry out. And it's going to take a while up in the Midwest for either one of those things to really happen. Also, well, everybody's loving this cheap fuel. We've got, you know, I seen diesel here over the weekend, $2.20 a gallon. You know, when's the last time you saw that? And it's just, it's good for everything except for your ethanol plants. And a lot of people, especially down in the Southern Plains, aren't real big on ethanol anyway. But whenever you've got a cattle feeding industry that has become reliant on those distillers grains. And now that they've slowed those ethanol plants down, they've shut a lot of them down completely. You're just not getting near as much of that byproduct out of there. And they've had their rations set up on that for a long time now. I remember when people first started feeding that, they said you couldn't get cattle to grade on them. Well, how wrong could they have been? And those were some academia people. I heard a 2-hour dissertation how it wouldn't promote marbling within the ribeye. Yeah, that was a bunch of BS, because we've got cattle grading better now than ever, and we've been using more distillers grains than ever. But now they're starting to get very expensive because there's just not enough of them out there for all the demand. But we're back here in 2019. This is the first report. I trust all you guys had a Merry Christmas, and I hope y'all have a profitable new year. I'll try to keep you abreast of the high points at least. I appreciate everybody that watches this video on a regular basis, shares it on social media and things like that. Tell your friends about it. Appreciate all that. I hope Santa Claus found your house. He found mine, left the bills. But I guess we gotta spoil our kids once in a while. Mine are all talking to their wrists like James Bond or something, but that's the new thing, and we gotta keep up with the Joneses, I guess. But let's look at the board for Wednesday. February live cattle futures down 35 cents to end the day at 123.52. April down 47 at 125.77, and then you go $8.50 off the deep end to get down into June. January feeder cattle down 90 cents on Wednesday at 147.95. March down 80 at 145.95. Your fats, nothing to speak of at all this week. And of course, New Year's Day is not nearly as big a holiday as Christmas, and it's just that your feedlot guys kind of know the condition that they're in, that the feedlot mud problems and things are sapping the weight off these cattle and holding them back a little bit. They know that the packers are still pretty hungry because of what they did last week, and they're just holding back and try to get another several bucks off of them and have a pretty good chance of getting it done. Last week, 67,700 head were sold, mostly all at 123 live and 195 dressed. Your weighted average on live steers was 122.52, up 371 from the previous week, and you're not hearing many people complain about big carcasses anymore, and the heifers are not having a higher weighted average than steers like they were when they were really kind of breaking down on those heavy carcasses of heavy cattle. But we've worked through most of those heavy cattle now. Your dressed steers average 194.25 in your 5-area feeding region. That was up $4.29. Where they did have a few fat cattle this week was Yankton, South Dakota, earlier in the week at their fat cattle auction. Around 1,200 head, selling from 121 to 125 in the ring, kind of 123 on the average, so right up there close with what's going on in the country. And your packers are pretty aggressive in the sales there. So with your regional packers kind of relying on those sales to get a big part of their needs filled. Box beef cutout values continue to gain ground. And you know, we ended the year in 2018 the same price on fat cattle as we started it at 123. And you think, gosh dang, was that where we were at? But yeah, 123 is where we ended 2017 and 2018. But the heck of it is, your choice cutouts were $13 higher. Who's keeping all that money in there in the middle? It's definitely not your cattle feeders. And you know, the packers can look in the mirror. They've had another banner year. They've increased their production and kept more of the good out of it. And but not to worry, we're all in this same industry together. You just follow their lead and do everything they tell you, and they'll take care of you. Right, wrong, they take care of themselves first. And if you're able to scratch out a living in there, it's going to be with some risk management, I guarantee you, because it's not going to be able to let you live up and up, just straight up cash. But you look at your choice cuts on Wednesday, $216.64, that was up another $1.29. and selects 210.91, up a quarter. But talking a little bit about how we ended the year there at 123, and like I said, your choice cuts were $13 higher on the same fat cattle market. But you know, we had such a good demand from especially export, but also domestic demand. We killed 2.6% more cattle, or had higher production, and 2.6% more cattle. And that was about the same as it was on your hogs, and your sheep or lambs were nearly that much. So that's a lot of protein that we've choked down people's throats and sent overseas and did different things, and still keep those prices that much higher. But just very impressive. But you look, we killed 32,511,000 head of cattle in 2018 compared to 31,700,000 in 2017, and it doesn't look like they're going to slow down. We had the biggest production we've had in many years, since back before when we had more big time commercial packing facilities. So they're running those things at near capacity, which makes it even more efficient for them, which makes them be able to make even more money, and they can use a portion of that money to invest in research and development of fake meat and things like that, so they don't miss out on any of the protein money that's coming in. But let's look at your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late on Wednesday was at 146.13. That was up 63 cents from the last big trading day we had, which was before Christmas, back at the end of that previous week. So we're holding good, but I have heard some of my friends out there, buyers, saying that they are buying some feeding type calves cheaper than they did right there in the last few days before we broke for Christmas. And it's all pretty much due to the lot conditions out there, because there's just a lot of places that can't take any cattle, fewer holes for them, and this is kind of a small industry when you talk about outlets for cattle anyway. And when you start plugging some of those up with mud, that is not a good deal. But still had several very impressive sales on Wednesday. Of course, we hadn't had any sales for a while, and there were especially some farmer feeders that were hungry for some cattle, ready to get their boots muddy and get started again. One of the big good sales they had on Wednesday was in Creston, Iowa. Creston, America, they call it. Tom Fry and his family had nearly 2,500 head there at Creston. Good sale. You look at this report on Cattle Market Central, you see the weighted averages on the different weights of steers there. Included in there were 402 head of 6-weight steers, average 653 at 155.28 on the average, pretty darn good. 569 head of steers, average 735 at 148.99. And then you look at the premier bunch there, consignment from Wastini family there, had a load of 736 pound steers there at 153.10. They had a second load, weighed about the same at 152.10, but had a good sale there at Creston, Iowa. Another good sale at Huss Platte Valley Market, Kearney, Nebraska. 3,300 head there. My friend Tom Walters, he knows how to call a market, calls it right, calls it conservative. You don't have to search. But compared to 2 weeks ago, he said a flat 600 pound steer would be $5 higher. 7 to 8 weight steers, which mostly just be backgrounded calves. Now we're not talking about a lot of yearlings here. Be steady to $2 higher. But any of those feeder steers weighing over 8, full $5 lower, there's no longer any chance of getting those cattle to finish in line with the April board. So we've lost that, and in turn our heavy feeders are going to be cheaper here for the next week or two till everybody kind of absorbs that. But in that good sale they had at Huss Platte Valley, they had 322 head of steers come through the ring, weighing 706 at 157.50. Wow. But all of those pale in comparison with Bassett, Nebraska. You know how they are. You know how it is. You get out there in the sand hills in Bassett, and a lot of seed corn caps in there and a lot of order buyers with seed corn orders. But Bassett, Nebraska had over 4,600 head of cattle there and had a really good sale. You look at this Cattle Market Central market report on just the steers, you see the averages there and the head counts, just unbelievable. 1,169 head of steer calves will average 567 at 182.63 on the average, people, and that's in the upper fives, 182.63. 1,263 head of 6-weight steers average 644 at 171.02 on the average. Included in all those steers is 107 head of 442-pound steer calves, bring 223. 80 head of thin-fleshed 535-pound steer calves, bring a $196. 132 head of 6-weight steers, a string of them through the ring, 636 pounds at 173, and had a load of 697-pound steer calves, bring 165.50. Woo! And I tell you what, people, when you get down here, but well below 70, especially you get below I-40, they don't even believe those quotes. But I tried to show you as much of them as I could. But Albion, Nebraska, we'll finish with their big quote there. 53 head of 730-pound steers bring $160 flat. And that's your feeder flash for Thursday.